Nanalo na found with the Team James, daang libong pesos.
Family Feud, 5:35 p.m.
Welcome to my episode that is called
Nagmamano pa.
That's okay.
Iran has arrested dozens of people it accuses of helping Israel target military sites. That's according to local media. State-linked outlets report that security forces have detained suspects across several provinces, accusing them of gathering intelligence on sensitive locations and economic infrastructure. Officials say the roundup is part of a broader push to stop what they describe as ground-level tip-offs to Israel. This comes as the U.S. president has threatened more strikes on Iran's Karg Island and is pushing for allies to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. On Saturday, Trump telling NBC News, quote, "We may hit it a few more times, just for fun." The remarks signal a sharp escalation from Trump and come as the U.S. rejects new efforts by Middle Eastern allies to start ceasefire talks. Three sources tell Reuters that Oman and Egypt have been trying to open diplomatic channels, but Washington is brushing them off. And Iran is refusing to come to the table until U.S. and Israeli strikes stop. Two senior officials have told Reuters they've rejected the possibility of any ceasefire for now. They also say several countries have been trying to mediate an end to the conflict. And with no diplomatic movement, the fallout continues to spill into the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow, crucial oil route seeing drone attacks and shipping disruptions. That's raised fuel prices across Asia and is pushing Japan, which relies on the Middle East for 90% of its oil supply, to release a record 80 million barrels of oil on Monday. Tokyo says that's a roughly 45-day supply and will cut national reserves by 17%. Energy analysts say the move mainly buys time, but can't fully offset a prolonged Hormuz disruption. Meanwhile, U.S. officials are urging allies to buy more American energy.
Oh,
Iran has allowed some Indian vessels to sail through the Strait of Hormuz, a rare exception to the blockade. Here's a representative for Iran's supreme leader in India, Abdul Majid Hakim Elahi.
Yes, the oil and the ships which support our enemies, that they are not allowed to go. But the other countries, they should not be suffer.
But many Indian sailors have been stuck for 2 weeks, and they say they're growing increasingly desperate as drone and missiles hit ships nearby. Reporter Saurabh Sharma has more.
The situation as of now is that there are about 20 tankers and vessels which are stuck, and they have a lot of Indian crew on them. I was able to speak with at least 3 sailors who are stranded on different vessels, and these sailors have been telling me that initially they were not able to access the internet. Then they started seeing drones. They even saw fighter jets passing. And according to the sailors that I spoke to, the only option that they have now is to sail to the nearest port of a different country where the airspace is still open. Or the alternate route for them would be to stay with the ship till they get a clearance to come out or pass through that Strait of Hormuz. The authorities in Iran and the authorities from India is communicating with them very regularly, and they are assuring that nothing will happen. Iran's ambassador has repeated that India and Iran have been friends. Even the Indian Prime Minister had a telephonic conversation with the Iranian Prime Minister. So, given the cultural relations that India shares with Iran, India is a major exporter of rice to Iran. So, I think these are the leverages that India has.
As New Delhi works diplomatic channels, protests have erupted across India over a cooking gas shortage. Demonstrators were seen carrying gas cylinders and chanting while moving through the streets. Residents report being stuck waiting in hours-long lines due to disruptions in liquefied petroleum gas, the cooking gas millions rely on. Like Shiv Kumar, who took time off of work to line up at 5 a.m., but left empty-handed with it all sold out. Without gas, some like teacher Mohammed Parvez are turning to fire, burning wood from school benches or whatever scraps they can find to cook their meals. India's government's asking people not to panic to avoid stockpiling. Top U.S. and Chinese economic officials are meeting in Paris today to smooth out the path for President Trump's trip to Beijing later this month. The talks are being led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. And they're focusing on some of the toughest issues: tariffs, rare earths, U.S. high-tech export controls, and China's purchase of American farm goods. But U.S.-China analysts tell Reuters they're not expecting a major trade breakthrough, with Washington's attention being pulled toward the war in Iran. Formula One is canceling its April races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia as the conflict in Iran intensifies. F1 says security risks, including Iranian drone and missile strikes hitting Manama and airport closures across the Gulf, make holding the races unsafe. Reuters motorsports correspondent Alan Baldwin says it's unlikely those events will be rescheduled.
What I've been told from those in the paddock in the know are that the likelihood is that the calendar will go from 24 races down to 22, and they won't be rescheduled anywhere else for logistical reasons, which will mean that effectively April is a month without racing in Formula One.
3 Iranian women's soccer players who sought asylum in Australia are now choosing to return to Iran. It's a sharp turnaround after refusing to sing the national anthem at an Asia Cup match. Australia says the women were granted humanitarian visas and offered support to stay. Another member changed her mind last week. Over to Cuba now, where anti-government protesters attacked a Communist Party office in Moron after a rally over blackouts and shortages turned violent overnight. Videos verified by Reuters show a large fire and crowds shouting liberty. State media say police detained 5 people. President Miguel Diaz-Canel says anger over power cuts is understandable, but he warns there will be no impunity for vandalism or violence. We spoke to Dan Trotta, who's in our Havana bureau, about how these shortages are shaping daily life.
I've been traveling to Cuba on and off for the past 10 years, and this is by far the worst I've ever seen in terms of the conditions, the hardships for the people. There's always been shortages, but the shortages of food, water, medicine are more acute than ever. And on top of that, now you have the fuel shortage caused by what's essentially a U.S. oil blockade, preventing oil shipments from coming into the country. Fuel is being rationed. The country's ground to a halt.
For more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on a smart speaker, just ask for the latest news from Reuters 7 days a week. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show. That's it for your news update.
To see more stories, open Google News.